hey, as you can see, I am a fire-breathing dragon now. Wow. And with me, I have the wonderful Liz Fong-Jones, who's a principal developer advocate at Honeycomb. And I'm a big fan. I've been following you for so long. If you don't know who Liz Fong-Jones is, which rock have you been living under, really? Liz is here today to talk to us about her road to the road to observability. Oh, the trade-offs you'll make. So Liz, are you ready?
I sure am. Congratulations. Fantastic. Today is your day. You're off to observability. You're off and away. You have brains in your head. You have hands on keyboard. You can steer yourself any direction you go toward. But what direction should you go? Well, once upon a time, I worked at a company that duplicated a lot of work. Sorry, Nathan. And there were 20 ways to do anything. And a lot of people were building technology solutions because that's what they thought that was the right thing to do. And our mission, of either things like fanatical support or focus on the user and all else will follow, those things were actually really challenging for people to do because people lacked the appropriate observability into their production systems. And the road to happiness for our customers was actually a road to pain for us because we had a lot of technical debt and we had a lot of operational load. We had the wrong incentives in our organization because we were rewarding people for building their own thing and saying, nothing else can possibly work here. It wasn't invented here. It's not good enough for Google. I'm a snowflake, right? And people were spending their time doing all of these projects that they thought would get them promoted rather than delivering impact for our users. This organization had too much autonomy over the tools that they were building. But also, the opposite of this can be really, really disempowering and dysfunctional if you have a lack of autonomy and a lack of control over the tools that you use. So there's a better way. And today I want to kind of sum up what you've talked about with regard to observability and site reliability engineering practice. So let's remind ourselves of what our goal is. So our goal as site reliability engineers is to achieve appropriate reliability and scalability. And this is where we really take to heart the idea of service level objectives, where we really take to heart the idea that we need to measure and understand our customers' experiences and start from there in order to debug issues. But it's not just that. As much as I love the cute firefighter hats and theme of this conference, right, our goal is not to be fighting fires all the time. Our goal is to prevent fires from breaking out in the first place. So we need to think about scalability of the humans and of the machines, right? No one should have to do too much operations. And misguided projects can really make the wrong trade-offs in terms of, for instance, making it more scalable, but waking people up 10 times as often as well, right? We want people to be able to peacefully sleep through the night. In order to do this, we need to have not just SLOs, but we also need to have the right control loop over our systems and between our systems and our people. We need to have the appropriate amount of observability here. We need to be able to understand what's happening inside of our systems and debug novel cases that we've never seen before in production, rather than feeling like production is welded shut and that we can only treat it as a black box. And it's not just break fix. We need to make better business decisions. We don't need to only focus on operational resilience and restoring system to service and firefighting. We need to think about the broader picture. Are we encouraging people to add telemetry to their applications as they're writing the code rather than bolting on afterwards? Can we shorten release cycles to empower the business and our developers to move faster and ship code faster rather than just focusing on infinite nines? And can we understand where's the hidden debt in our systems? Where are the systems that are, I didn't know we depended on that, right? And can we understand what the impact is of their changes on users? The other misconception about observability that I want to clear up is that observability is not just the data. Observability is not logs, traces, and metrics. No amount of logs, traces, and metrics are going to help you if you can't actually make sense of them. You have to be able to add instrumentation to your code as easily as you would add a printf debug statement, and you have to be able to store the data in an economical fashion And then you need to be able to query that data to understand and get those insights into why is my system broken? For whom is it broken? How do I make it better? And above all else, we need to get ourselves out of the critical path, right? As much as we all love feeling like heroes, shining white knights in armor riding to the rescue, the best thing that we can do for our developer communities is to get out of their way, to not be blockers, so that they can, in fact, make forward progress in debugging their own systems without having to escalate to us. So don't make systems that depend upon cloning yourself. And work across team boundaries to ensure that everyone is able to contribute to the reliability of the system. Don't just shovel work all over the fence. That's going to reproduce the battle days before SRE and DevOps. And above all else, we need to think about engineering not just as the practice of writing software, engineering not just as the practice of firefighting, and instead engineering is what capabilities are we unlocking? So that's why I talk about the trade-offs on the road to observability. Because we need to think and rethink what is SRE and what is observability. So instead of saying, hey, I have a problem I'd like to solve, let's change the incentives. Let's change the dialogue. So let's stop sharing like all of our hacks, right? Like let's stop rewarding each other and saying, oh my God, that's so awesome. When you see something that's absolutely duct taped together, right? Don't practice conference-driven development. Instead, let's talk about the wins. What wins have we delivered for our users? What wins have we delivered for our developers? How did we define the problem? And what was the actual problem that those people were having, right? What was the story of the woes of the world before us? And not just what was the final solution that we arrived at, but what are the things that we tried? What are the dead ends? What are the bottlenecks, right? So that other people don't have to stumble through all those bottlenecks at once. How did we actually solve it in the end? And why did we come to that decision? And look at how reusable it is, right? This is not a one-off. We should be building things that other people can leverage so that we're not repeating the same things over and over and over again. And we need to focus on how much work that we're saving, not how much work we're doing, right? Instead of talking about the technical complexity of the thing that we built, instead, maybe we should be talking about how we reused an existing solution or adopted something open source by looking left and looking right before we start building things. So don't promote and reward people for creating complexity. Promote people for the amount of pain that they're able to solve for other people. So adopt things from open source. There are open source observability libraries, for instance. Or even if you have a bespoke need, use inner sourcing. Don't build the same thing at your company 20 times. Maybe you're Google and 3 times or maybe 5 times is enough to account for all the possible use cases, but you don't need to sit down and write a brand new thing every single time. And I do work for a vendor. I'd be remiss not to mention, hey, like, is this a strategic advantage to my company to build this? If not, why am I spending development time building it? Why am I not spending time on things that are the critical, unique bits that make my business special? So outsourcing things can be really, really powerful if you are strategic about it. So this is not to give you a recipe for what to do, right? Like, should I build, should I buy? The answer is, it depends. I'm not going to tell you exactly what to do, but here's some of the things I might encourage you to think about first. What is the problem that you're trying to solve? And not just what are the problems you're trying to solve, but like, what problem are customers actually having? Your customers, I assure you, are not saying, I want more dashboards, right? If you're an SRE team, your teammates and your developer partners are not saying, I want more dashboards. What they're saying is, I want to solve my problems faster. I want to debug faster, right? People are not saying, I want to have more metrics and traces, right? I think this is what people get wrong here when they adopt this false idea about the 3 pillars of observability, right? People think that if you just add one more data type, it's going to magically add understandability to your systems. Instead, we have to think about what is the problem that we're trying to solve. Okay, we don't have enough data about our systems. How do we add the relevant data to our systems to enable developers to move fast? That is our goal here. So after that, we can examine, okay, why is it that we care about this thing? Okay, what impact is it going to have on the business? And then after that, we can sit down and design a solution. Thinking, of course, about who's going to run it, who's going to actually keep it up day to day, and making sure that it is as close to the people who are developing it as possible. Are we actually thinking about maintainership? And I mean maintainership in the code sense, in the product sense, right? To make sure that it's not just a random collection of features, that it's something that's actually usable by the people who are going to use it day to day. And to document what we considered, right? Did we consider open source? Why did or didn't the existing open source solutions work? And maybe one thing doesn't solve it. That's okay. Rather than building it entirely bespoke, you can at least adapt 1 or 2 or 3 existing things and glue them together to make something that's right for your business. Above all else, when you write brand new code, that is now technical debt. You're going to have to maintain it, right? Something like 70 to 90% of the total cost of ownership of code is incurred after it's written, not in the course of writing the code. If you upstream it, though, then it results in it being a shared burden, and it no longer is technical debt because it's something that other people care about too, and it's not just you doing it. Running software is also its own form of tech debt. So don't run your own Kubernetes cluster. You can use Amazon Kubernetes EKS, or you can use Azure Kubernetes Service or GKE, right? There are all these options, so you don't have to run your own software. Because at the end of the day, you have a limited and finite amount of time and energy on your team. So be thoughtful and make sure that you build the right things. Otherwise, you're going to waste months when you could have been doing something that was more that was better for your customers and for your teams, and you'll get out innovated. And when you do build something, collaborate with the community. So listen first, do user studies, figure out what are the needs, not just of your team, but of other teams as well. Look for similar problems and do requirements gathering so you can understand what to easily adapt and extend. And maybe you'll find a pre-existing solution that way. So look left and right first before you build. And document and provide examples. And I don't just mean when you're writing your own code. When you have some outside system that you're bringing in, do canonical code examples, because people often copy the first instance they find of something that's working. So that thing that you threw together and just published on your company's wiki, that's going to be used forever, and people are going to be copying it forever as a template. So make sure that you get it right and that you keep it updated. And focus on upskilling each other. Don't keep all of the knowledge of how to best use the tools inside of one person's head. This is an anti-pattern we often see in the monitoring and observability space, where there is one person on a team who is the Splunk wizard. That's not really a helpful pattern. We would really much rather have people focus on being able to up-level everyone to the level of the best debugger. People should feel like they can learn from what other people have done and that they can adapt and improve and extend the tools that they work on, and to document these kind of common patterns so that anyone can pick up the tool and figure out how to solve the questions that they have. User confusion is really costly, right? If you do a hack that saves you half an hour, but it takes every single person who uses it 5 minutes to get it set up because of the hack that you did, an extra 5 minutes, well, that's after 6 users. You would have been much better off just spending the 30 minutes to do it right, rather than having every single person setting up your code from now until the future take an extra 5 minutes to do so. So don't do clumsy workarounds. Like, think about, even for developer tools, even for internal facing developer tools, they are a product. They deserve good product management. But there's also user confusion that comes from, which solution do I pick if there's more than one? And that was a problem that we had in the observability community, in the open source observability community. We were in a world where there was 2 standards, open census and open tracing, that both said we are the way to get telemetry into a variety of different vendor solutions. So we converged. About 2 years ago, we said we are going to merge the projects together and make one new project called Open Telemetry, that we are going to get the best parts both of open tracing and of open telemetry, and that rather than having a bunch of egos, was the best way to make life better for our customers. And this is just a very, very, very small subset of the people who became involved in open telemetry. Everyone ranging from major cloud platforms to telemetry and observability vendors to end users. We all came together to develop this common solution that really allows both end users and providers of observability solutions to benefit, because it means that people get increased choice, people get increased portability. And it means that people no longer have to maintain 5 different sets of vendor-specific integrations, and instead we can build excellent integrations for every major language and for every major web framework. So once you have something that's working, share out to the community and make sure that you are listening to their feedback. Use common ADMs and APIs so that people feel like when they are adopting OpenTelemetry, for instance, like they're working in their own language, that ADMs make sense to them. While at the same time, that the idea of creating a stand and creating an attribute, for instance, that those are common concepts that are shared in common between all of the language SDKs for OpenTelemetry. So don't dump hacks in the community, right? And that's something that we've been very, very careful about with OpenTelemetry. And that even though it's taken us a while to ship a 1.0 general availability release in each language, we've been very careful to communicate what's beta and what's not so that we can promise API stability for multiple years once things reach general availability. We also have explained who OpenTelemetry is for and who it is not for, because that way people can understand very quickly, is this something that I should use? Is this ready for me, or should I hold off and wait? Should I build my own thing, or should I adopt the existing thing? Explaining that context and the design thinking really helps. And we encourage people to upstream their code and specifications rather than maintaining separate forks. An unnamed company that's a finance company in New York has been running its own Kubernetes fork for many years, and that's the kind of pattern we don't want to see people feel like they have to do with the OpenTelemetry ecosystem, right? We want to make sure that everything is compatible, but at the same time, allow people to create distributions that are more opinionated than we can be. For instance, AWS customers can get an opinionated distribution of the upstream code with common configuration options that AWS customers need. And we have a robust community of maintainership, with dozens of employers being represented across OpenTelemetry. Because we all know that single company projects are doomed to failure, that just because you donate something to an open source foundation does not make it have open governance. So open governance and having many people own the project has made our project successful. We document our technical decisions about why our API is the way that it is, and when we might revisit it so that people can understand and gain that context, so that we can have robust discussions about what's best for our users. Overall, you don't have to be a hero to have excellent observability. You just have to think about what are the right idioms to adopt and what technology choices can I make to make my colleagues' lives easier. So let's reflect once again on the goals that we have as SREs, right? Our goal is to help accelerate software delivery so that people can ship software with confidence. In order to do that, we need to make sure that the lead time from software being written to it being released is as short as possible, that we're able to push code as often as possible, and that when things do break, that we are able to recover as quickly as possible. And that while it is likely that things will break, that there will be very few catastrophic breakage events. And the industry is improving. From 2018 to 2019, the population of elite performers that were shipping multiple times per day, who are having downtimes last less than an hour, that population improved dramatically year over year from 2018 to 2019. And in fact, the 2021 DORA report survey is out now, and I encourage people to take it. But one of the key factors involved in the DORA report is it turns out that it is highly correlated that people who are in the elite category have really robust CI/CD systems and have really robust monitoring and observability. And intuitively, this makes sense to me, right? That if you cannot debug your software, it's going to take you much longer to understand what's happening inside of your software. And therefore, your recovery times will be longer and people will feel less confident to push code. But I don't want to pat ourselves on the back that 25% of people are elite performers. What scares me is the population of the worst performers is remaining constant year after year. and that there are still many, many people who are in the lower mid performance category. And I want to help bring those people to the next level. I believe that writing software and shipping software and owning software and running it in production shouldn't suck. And I've been there before. I've been on really operationally overloaded teams. But I think that by talking about what we do at Honeycomb and what we did at Google to fix some of these issues, I think that it can help inspire people to do better. Honeycomb is a company that has 24 engineers working at it, right? We're a team of about 25 engineers and a total company size of 75 people, but we're competing against companies that are 10 times our size or 100 times our size. And we work in the field of observability. So our job is to make your systems humane to run by ingesting telemetry data, for instance, trace formatted data from your systems, and enabling you to explore that data and feel like you have a sense of ownership and control over your code. And we practice observability-driven development ourselves. Observability is our superpower that enables us to be nimble and compete with companies 10 times our size. We don't throw away 20% of our work week. We deploy and ship code every day of the week, up to 12 times per day, including on Fridays. This is a graph that shows the number of deploys per day over the past year. And you can see that, in fact, things do quiet down over the weekends, but every single day of the work week, we are shipping code every single hour on the hour. And it takes us less than 3 hours from the time that an engineer sits down to work on a ticket from the inbox to the time that it goes out to production. That's less than 3 hours, including peer review and all of the continuous integration, all of our delivery safeguards. We push code every single hour, and that results in only 1 to 2 new commits per build artifact, so we know if there's going to be a problem. And it's a short enough window such that developers can watch their changes go out in production. We have very high confidence in our code because we've embraced testing, and not just functional testing, but also user interface snapshot testing and more. We're able to mitigate outages with flag flips or fixed forwards rather than emergency rollbacks. Less than 1 in 1,000 of our changes catastrophically fail. And our time to recover, even in that case, is less than 20 minutes. So that's how we move fast with confidence, is by embracing using existing software. We didn't invent our own feature flagging platform. We used LaunchDarkly. We didn't invent our own continuous delivery platform. We use CircleCI. So that's how we encourage you to think about things, is adopt the right tooling, adopt the right building blocks, use high quality instrumentation such as OpenTelemetry, and don't invent your own telemetry platform in-house. Send things to a vendor, for instance, Honeycomb, but like really any vendor would do, that will enable you to answer questions about your system and gain increased confidence in how your software is behaving in production. So overall today, what I'd encourage you to do is to write less software by looking around you, evaluating what's out there, collaborating and sharing, and above all else, thinking about what's the problem I'm trying to solve? Am I the right person to solve this? And how am I going to measure the impact of what I do? If you're interested in the slides, you can find them at honeycomb.io/Liz, and I'm available at Liz Leary on Twitter. Thank you very much for letting me join you at WTF is SRE, and I hope that you have fewer WTFs in your future. I cannot hear you, Leon.
Oh, no. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Because I just double muted myself. Thank you so much for your talk. I'm still impressed with the less than 3 hours sleep time. It's very hard to believe. So please come in with your questions. We have a little bit of a delay always with the stream, so it usually takes a little bit of time. But there's already a question, which is from Alex. What options do we have for enforcing monitoring? For example, OPA gatekeeper or something, ensuring we define checks for microservice A, B, C, etc.
So my answer to that is you should not overload your amount of monitoring and dashboards. I actually encourage people to have fewer monitors rather than more. So when you have microservices, it's important to define your service level objectives for the overall end-to-end workflow, and to make sure that you have tracing so that you can trace through the execution of those requests through your microservices to know which microservice is failing. but you don't need to set up alerts on CPU utilization for every microservice, right? If you do that, you're just going to be setting yourself up to get woken up a bunch in the middle of the night, even if there's no customer impact. So focus on making sure that every team has SLOs that are cultivated by a product manager so that you know what workloads you should be measuring and make sure that you're adhering to that, and everything else will follow. You don't need to add monitors to every single workload.
Yeah, thank you. I totally agree. Sometimes it's really just more about the people rather than the tools. Like we don't have to always try and solve everything with tech, I feel.
Exactly, right? Like it's a socio-technical system, right? You have to make sure that people are empowered and they have the right tools in their hands to do their jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was also something that I was thinking about during your talk, because I don't know if you know Kim Creighton, but she recently posted something on Twitter about we're not just building gadgets, we're not just building widgets anymore. This is a knowledge industry. But now after your talk, I'm feeling it's not even about specific knowledge. It's more about the empowerment to gain any kind of knowledge.
Yes.
So, okay, that wasn't really a question. I just wanted to sound a little bit smart. But there's another question coming in from Anonymous. So first of all, great talk. What is your recommendation for the road of success? That's a broad question.
Yes, so I would encourage you to look at another talk that I've given before, I think at a Container Solutions event called Production Excellence. So in my mind, the road to success is 4 things. Do you have service level objectives? Do you have good observability in order to debug the SLOs if they break? Do you have the ability to collaborate between teams? And finally, do you have the ability to be proactive about your SLOs and to make good design decisions that reflect being able to achieve your SLOs? Because, right, like if you build a system on a bunch of 99.9% reliable components, you're never going to be able to achieve 99.99% availability, right? So making sure that you are proactively managing your error budget. So do those 4 things and you'll be successful. That's the roadmap, and you can go see my previous talks on that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So what's the best way to follow you and keep up to date?
Yeah, any of those links on that side will work. So honeycomb.io/Liz, lizthegray.com, or @lizthegray. And I do offer office hours. So anyone in the world is welcome to book 30 minutes of consulting time with me. I offer them every day, and I do them at Euro-friendly hours. So I offer them at 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific time, which I think is something like, 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m.-ish in Europe.
That is so fantastic. Thank you so much, Liz. Anything that you want to give us, like as a last wise tip?
I think the last advice is don't be intimidated by it, right? Like if you make a small change that makes you and your colleagues' lives easier, it'll free up so much time that you'll have more and more and more time to focus on being proactive. So don't be afraid to carve off 1 day, 2 days, 3 days a week to work on proactive work and not firefighting. And then you'll spend less and less of your team's time firefighting over time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Even though, I mean, we do enjoy the firefighting theme. I think there's maybe some romanticized ideal of like, oh, I'm super busy, I'm super important because I'm being called up in the middle of the night, and that's kind of like a heroic.
Right, that's why I put that slide in about importance, right? Your importance is not correlated to the number of alarms and colleagues calling you up and clamoring for your attention.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so thank you so much, Liz.